Welcome back to the show. I'm Natalie Brunell, and joining me this week is technology leader and entrepreneur Brett Morrison, who is the co-founder and CEO of TrueVote, hopefully bringing more integrity to elections with the help of Bitcoin. Brett, thank you so much for joining me. And I just want to say it's such a delight whenever I get to see you at conferences because you attend a lot of them and you attend a lot of Bitcoin events. And it's always nice to see your wife too. So shout out to Seema as well.
Yeah, same, Natalie. Thank you. Yeah, I've been around Bitcoin for a long time, so those are my peeps, and we love that community.
Yeah, well, I think that's an understatement. I am fascinated by your backstory. So, Brett, for everyone who's watching this or listening to this and hasn't heard from him before, you have a long background in computer programming, computer science. You helped build the back end of big fashion companies before Shopify was even around. You were a director of engineering for SpaceX. I mean, you have had a lot of work that led you to discovering Bitcoin. So, can you tell people a little bit about your background and career path before we dive into TrueVote?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've been super passionate about computing since I was young, and back in the, I'm back in like the 80s and 90s when I was learning first about computers. I realized it came easy to me. So I saw all my classmates in my first year of college struggling with computer science, and it became easy to me. So I thought, okay, this is something that I really like, because when something comes easy to you, it makes you kind of want to do it more. So I really liked the challenges of computer science, and I just was fascinated by being able to tangibly see your hard work yield results. So from that, I've had a really interesting professional career path, as you mentioned, a couple things, and it's been great. And the e-commerce company Onestop that I co-founded, I was there 11 years and built all these really interesting websites for some of the top apparel brands, and that was such an interesting experience to manage the complete supply chain from finished goods all the way through the warehouse and out the door and into people's homes, and to do that for 11 years and see that company grow to 250 employees. And some of our clients were really notable ones that people would have heard of, like Lululemon and True Religion and John Varvatos. And
Yeah,
I'll
so when
forget
I
those
go
names.
buy my workout clothes, like you built the back end of that essentially.
I did. They eventually took it in house. So we were an outsourced e-commerce company, and then some of our clients, we'd have contracts for a few years, and Lululemon decided to work on it in house because it was booming so well, and they didn't want to share the profits with us, honestly. So they just wanted to take it themselves. So they ended up hiring a whole team and doing it themselves. But we were early pioneers in that. And now, Shopify and Squarespace and Magento make it a lot easier for companies to build their own sites. But back in the early 2000s, there weren't that many options. So so I built one.
And then the
And
SpaceX, I want to hear about that because you essentially helped design the technology behind the rockets that are going up in space that Elon Musk always tweets about.
yeah, I got there in 2015, and we hadn't landed a rocket yet. So I was there for our first landing in December 2015, and that was super exciting. Yeah, so I was in charge of the team that built the manufacturing software that the assemblyman on the floor would use to assemble rockets. So
Wow.
that's a really complicated process. There's a lot of checks and balances and inspections, and they'd have to put cameras inside every little nook and crevice of the rocket to make sure all the tolerances were tight. And we'd have to have all these systems to alert if something's not right. It was a great experience in seeing software discipline and a product go from raw materials all the way to a rocket that takes off. So I was happy to be a part of that and be there when we landed our first rocket. And there's a famous video of the rocket landing, and I'm in the front row, like high-fiving everybody. And
Wow.
it was an exciting
I'll have
moment
to
that
try
I'll
to
never
find that.
forget. Yeah. I'm right there. I'm wearing a white pull-up hoodie. You can't miss me.
And you found, I mean, you were at SpaceX in 2015, but you found Bitcoin in like 2011, right? So talk
Yeah.
to me a little bit about that journey, because then I want to get to TrueVote, which I find super, super interesting, especially given the context around of the distrust surrounding elections today.
Yeah, it all kind of came together. So I've been a Wired magazine subscriber since the beginning, and it's still around. It's still a print version, and I'm sure very popular. And in 2011, I had just gotten married to Seema, and I was reading Wired, and there was this article, "The Rise and Fall of Bitcoin," and that was the first exposure I had of Bitcoin. And the article basically said that Bitcoin is dead, and we've all seen these Bitcoin death watch, and it was one of those. And I read it, and I thought, "Wow, what a interesting thing. Why did it die?" And then so of course I Googled, and I said, it's not dead. There's a lot of people still doing it. And I found Andreas Antonopoulos' videos and just watched as many of those. I started attending local meetups, and these are the early days. Like Roger Ver was there, and Eric Voorhees and Charlie Shrem, and all kind of the original Bitcoiners. And that was my first exposure. The Bitcoin Foundation, which really doesn't exist today and shouldn't. So yeah, I was in there early, and I really appreciated the tech and the computer science problem that Satoshi solved with the two generals. So that's what made me interested. And then I always thought of Bitcoin as its own currency. I'd never, ever thought of it as the price in dollars. And that's something I think a lot of new Bitcoiners have struggle with. They always think about the price. And
Yeah.
as we know, a lot of people think of it as an investment, as an asset. I never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as an alternative currency, and one that is freedom tech, where the unbanked can use it. And so the work that Alex Gladstein does, like, that's the stuff that interests me the most, is how are emerging economies using Bitcoin, and how can it be a closed loop payment system? And that stuff is way more interesting to me than the price, and always has been and always will be. So yeah, I just I've stayed on top of all the Lightning progress in the last few years, and I'm in there. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just I love all the work that all the builders that are out there building things on Bitcoin is what
Yeah.
interests me more than anything.
It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners who make this podcast possible. First up, Bitcoin 2024, the world's biggest Bitcoin conference, is coming to Nashville next year. Come join us for 3 full days of keynotes, panels, networking events, workshops, concerts, and more. My first ever Bitcoin conference was back in 2021, and that's where I dropped my first episodes of Coin Stories, not expecting this to become my full-time job. Anything can happen here, especially if you dream of working in the industry. Ticket prices go up every month until the big event, so don't miss out. You want to get your tickets early. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code HODL, HODL, for 10% off. I'll see you in Nashville. Next up, CrowdHealth. Health insurance costs are sky high today, and you send your money every month to a massive corporation, and you never see that money again, even if you don't get sick. Luckily, there's another option, and it's all about community. CrowdHealth brings together Bitcoiners who crowdfund each other's healthcare, so you no longer have to pay fiat health insurance companies. You get to help other Bitcoiners, and they help you in return. So how it works is when someone needs a doctor or hospital visit, CrowdHealth negotiates down the medical bill lower than what insurance would be, and the community helps you fund the costs. You get to save the money you would have sent to insurance, and hey, why not put it into Bitcoin? I'm so glad I made the switch to be part of this community, and now I spend only about $100 a month on healthcare. For more information and to join, head to joincrowdhealth.com/Natalie. I completely agree, and that goes to the idea of freedom technology helping to preserve democracies and our republic here. So what is TrueVote? Give me the elevator pitch, and
Mm-hmm.
why do we need it?
Well, it actually is. I realized that we do everything else on our phone except vote, and that bothered me. Why? And it occurred to me as I was standing online in 2013 on a physical line, not online, internet online, online outside in the cold, waiting to vote. And I had 2 small kids at the time, and I was very busy with my e-commerce company. And I'm like, why am I online? This is such a waste of my time. I hated it. And everyone else is on their phones. And I thought, why aren't we just voting on our phones? So that's where the first seed of interest sparked in my mind. And so I was thinking about it for the last few years. And then finally, after SpaceX, I decided, okay, I'm going to actually build this myself, and came up with the name TrueVote. I wrote the white paper. I published it in 2021, and I've been working on the platform since. And then 2 weeks ago today, I published a working demo of the TrueVote platform in action. So it all stemmed from me wanting to vote on my phone. And I feel like everyone should vote on our phone because we do everything else on our phone. And the current voting systems are really, really inefficient and analog. And if you look forward ahead in humanity's timeline, are we going to keep doing this? Are we going to keep waiting on lines? What about when the population is, 20, 30 billion people in the world? How is this going to scale? It doesn't. So we have to be
Yeah.
able to vote digitally. And I recognize that. And I thought, okay, I need to build it. And I just thought about how can I build it in a safe way? And Bitcoin is the only way I could see it really being done the right way. So I
Well,
built it using Bitcoin.
yeah, I want to dig into that because not only would it be more convenient to be able to vote on our phones, but then you start to wonder, well, how can you verify and make sure that the person you want to be voting is actually casting the vote? And I have to tell you, regardless of what people believe happened, because there are probably people watching this who think that the election was stolen. There are others who would say that that's a conspiracy theory. No matter what you believe, I would argue everyone wants a truthful election with integrity. And I will say that when I was a reporter, I did cover the last several presidential elections. And in the last one, I recall going to a specific polling location in Southern California. And I would interview people who came in holding a physical ballot, and they basically were turned away. They were told, "You already voted," and they said, "No, I didn't. This is my ballot. I'm holding it. Please allow me to vote." And they
Mm.
were turned away. And I just thought, well, that's scary. Maybe it's an anomaly. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe someone's lying. But what if there's something more? And so it does go to this greater question of how do we create an election using technology where we can verify that people are casting their ballots truthfully. So how do we use Bitcoin in order to do that through your company?
That is a great anecdotal story, and I'm sure it's not unique. And there are people that tried to vote that weren't able to vote, and that's really unfortunate. That's that's not a good feeling for someone who can vote and they can't, and then they suddenly are told they can't. That's awful, and it shouldn't be that way. So if we have digital elections that are accurate, there is no ambiguity in what we do. So that's what I intend to change, is where no one ever has that experience. You know, you still have to register to vote just like you do today. So there's no way I can replace that process right away. You still have to register with your local authority, whether it's the Secretary of State of California or elsewhere. And then you get your voter registration access. You're an eligible voter if you live in the area and you're not a convicted felon or whatever, you're over 18, whatever your voting requirements are. So we bind that registration record with the TrueVote account, which you can log in via Nostr. So I added Nostr to the authentication process. So Nostr is just a private public key pair, and it's like a password kind of. You generate your key and you make sure you secure it, and that's your access into logging into TrueVote. And then if you're a registered voter in an election, you get an access code. You type it in or QR scan it in, and then you have access to a ballot. You fill it out and you hit submit. So I'm TrueVote's trying to solve two problems. One is the inconvenience of today's systems, whether you're waiting online physically or having to fill out a mail-in ballot, drop it off. Those are inconvenient ways of voting. And then the second problem we solve is you don't know what happened to your ballot once you submit it. You really don't know, whether it's mail-in or you walk into a polling place and walk out. You really have no idea if your vote was counted, and that's a huge problem. And I don't know how society's accepted it for this long. Like, there's so much trust built in that you have to kind of just cede to the voting authorities, that you hope that they do the right thing. And yeah, there is a lot of skepticism that they do, and I can understand that. Mm-hmm. So with mobile voting and online voting, and with Bitcoin securing it, we can prove that your ballot was counted. You can see it just like you can see a Bitcoin transaction with a Bitcoin Explorer. I built a ballot explorer where you can see your ballot online, and it's decoupled from your user ID. So you do not, no one can see that you are associated with that ballot other than you. There's no link to that.
Can you help me understand a little bit of the technical component of this? Because I think one of the most inspiring and hopeful aspects of Bitcoin is that it will serve as a truth network, and you can verify things using your key so that people can rest assured that it really did come from you. So can you talk a little bit about it, maybe at just high level for those who aren't super technical and have had the coding background that you have, but how will this actually work, sort of taking advantage of Bitcoin's immutability and verification?
Right. Yeah, the thing is, people don't realize about most databases is that they can be altered by the employees of the company that own the database or anyone who has access to it. And Bitcoiners don't accept that, right? You have to have an immutable ledger. So the way TrueVote does this is we take the ballot data, so the submitted ballot, so you have your choices of candidates, of ballot measures. It gets kind of compressed and then what's called hashed, which is a checksum. So it's just basically a sequence of letters and numbers. It's about 30 characters long. And that checksum is unique to your ballot. And if the ballot is altered, that checksum changes, won't match again. So if any piece of data in that in the ballot changes, the checksum won't be the same. Mm-hmm. Then we take that checksum and we hash it alongside the Bitcoin blockchain at the time you submit the ballot. So that anchors it to the Bitcoin blockchain, which is running 24/7, 365 for 15 years now.
Is it inscribed like an ordinal?
No, it's using Peter Todd. Peter Todd is a Bitcoin core developer, and he created something called open timestamps. So fortunately, I don't have to actually create a Bitcoin transaction and pay a fee. Even if it was one Satoshi, it would add up after a while, right? So we don't make an actual Bitcoin transaction. It's an open timestamps transaction that is free, that runs alongside the Bitcoin network based on the Bitcoin block height at the moment you make the transaction. So it's locked, and that hash is locked. And if any data changes, the hash won't resolve again. So that's how I can prove that the data wasn't tampered with. So when you look at your ballot, you can see the hash matches, and you know that your ballot wasn't altered. And you can see your choices. You're looking at them with your eyes. You can see them.
So Brett, can you just walk me through how it would work? If this was implemented in the next big election, I have my phone, what would I do?
Yeah, you'd basically go to TrueVote.org, or you would have an app, and either way it'll run mobile web or an app, and you will have your election access code, which is issued to you by your registration authority. You then type that in or QR scan it in, you fill out your ballot, and you hit submit. Now, if you don't have an account on TrueVote, you don't need to have an Nostr account either. You can generate a Nostr key right on TrueVote. And if your viewers want to, they can look at the video I published, and you can see there's a generate account or sign in with an existing account. So you don't have to know about Nostr or anything. You can generate your own account with one or two taps. So yeah, that's it. You basically just sign into TrueVote. You fill out you enter your election access code in, and you fill out your ballot and hit submit, and you're done.
It's time for another quick break to hear these messages from my partners. I'm excited to share that I'm an advisor for the Orange Pill app. If you haven't downloaded this app yet, you're missing out on connecting with Bitcoiners in your area. The Orange Pill app is focused on building the social layer for Bitcoin and helping create opportunities for in-person connections and community building. You create a profile and you'll see lots of familiar faces, and then you can search for Bitcoiners and Bitcoin events based on your location. I'm geotagged in my home base, St. Louis, and I'm excited that Orange Pill app has allowed me to meet new people in my city. Come join us, use my referral code in the show notes, and start connecting today. Next up, I want to take a moment to recommend an outstanding recent book in the Bitcoin space, Bitcoin Evangelism by Brian DeMint. I've had the chance to have Brian on the show, and this is really the ultimate tool for orange pilling your friends, your family, your coworkers, and it will make you a more effective messenger for Bitcoin. We all have that story of how we disregarded Bitcoin the first time we heard about it because either the arguments weren't compelling enough, or maybe they weren't framed in a way that we could easily grasp them. Think of something like trustlessness or immutability. These are concepts that now we understand as Bitcoiners, but how do you explain them simply to someone totally new in the space? Well, Bitcoin Evangelism will help you do that. It will allow you to become a Bitcoin evangelist so that we orange pill millions of new Bitcoiners in the new year. Head to the link in my show notes to buy the book today. And this is open source, but ultimately it would be centralized, right? Because you have to use other technology. Some of it's, I think, produced by Microsoft, right? Can you talk about that? And are those attack vectors?
Great question. Yeah. So if you Google like blockchain voting, you'll see all sorts of efforts into creating a new token, a new blockchain, decentralized. They're not decentralized. We don't need a new token. We don't need a new blockchain. And us Bitcoiners know that. So yeah, it is a centralized system. TrueVote is centralized, but all the code is open source. It's all auditable. You can prove that the code running in TrueVote is the same code that's on GitHub open source. And yeah, Microsoft Azure, it's all hosted there. So it's not nodes the way that Bitcoin is, where they're running
Mhm.
all over the world. It's not quite that decentralized. It's still Microsoft Azure, which is spans across multiple regions, right? There's Azure data centers all over the world. And once we scale up TrueVote, they'll be running all over the world. And Azure will be receiving all that traffic. Um, so it's a hybrid. It's the TrueVote database is centralized, but then the hashes, the open timestamps part of it is decentralized via Bitcoin.
And it would remain private, though, in the sense that people could verify if you authenticated with a key, but they can't tell how you voted. Is that correct?
Right, right. Yeah. So only you as the voter can know that, okay, that ballot is my ballot. But no, everyone else just sees it. They don't have any link to it. Kind of like your wallet, you can confirm that there's a transaction on the blockchain explorer that belongs to your key. You can see it, but nobody else knows that it's your wallet. It's the same thing.
Got it. So, how do you scale this and actually transform something like the upcoming presidential elections, which I'm sure will be contested? A lot of people have expressed so much distrust in the system. So, how do you get True Vote to that level when isn't there a monopoly on the current voting system with companies like Dominion? I don't know too much about that, but what can you tell us?
Well, Dominion and other types of companies like that, they're all closed source intellectual property profit machines. They are there to make a profit and be non-transparent. TrueVote's going into this with a much different approach. I don't see how I don't see how you can build a voting system that's not transparent. And this is something I thought about. I've never deviated from, like, even before the 2020 election, dissatisfaction. I don't know how you can look yourself in the mirror and think that, I'm going to build a closed system voting. I don't understand how anyone could do that. Like, to me, it's an indefensible position why you'd be
Yeah.
against open source voting. And I just think that the world is just still kind of like, open source in itself is relatively new, really, for a lot of people. Like, the concept of having code that is public that people can read and use and build and fork or whatever they want to do to it, that concept isn't all that old. And I think people are so used to companies selling software for profit. And so, yeah, to answer your question, though, about how to scale it, it starts with small elections and we work our way up. So
Mm,
we'll do unions, associations, some other private elections, and then work our way up to city, state, and eventually national, and also international. So I'm launched the
yeah.
company multilingual right out of the gate. I'm not, this isn't just a US centric effort. There's voting that happens all over the world every single week. There's elections happening somewhere. And there's discontent and frustration around the entire world. So I want to bring a solution that's easy for uh, governments and jurisdictions to use, where the voters really feel confident about, hey, my vote really did count, and I can see it for myself.
Well, and what I also like is this idea that with Bitcoin securing something as a truth network, it turns into black or white. It's about facts. It's no longer the grays where people could argue and everything becomes politicized and there are shades of things that we don't really know and so we have to make assumptions and people pile into teams. It's really like, is this true or is this not true? Did this happen or did this not happen? And I think that we need that in so many aspects, but certainly who we're going to have representing us.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make voting boring. I really do. I want to make it so, you wake up on election day, you get a
Yeah.
notification. Good morning, Brett. Don't forget to vote today. Tap here. You tap, you fill out your election, you hit submit, and you're done, and you know it counted. That's the way it needs to be. It doesn't need to be this nebulous thing that nobody understands and everyone hopes it's going to work out. It shouldn't be that way. And so, what I think might be a side effect is, once this really becomes ubiquitous, we'll have more elections and they'll be so easy. Like, we'll
Yeah.
democratize more than we do today. Today, I'm sure you've gotten postcards in the mail where, oh, there's a ballot measure in your local area and you need, you're expected to vote on it. And it's just a small election. But I can see more and more of those happening because they're going to be so much easier and way less expensive to administer too. Like, today's elections are super expensive. They have to hire a lot of people, a lot of temp workers, a lot of volunteering. And there's all sorts of fighting over, can you issue water when people are online? All that stuff should end.
Yeah.
It just needs to be a lot simpler. And the way to do that is through technology.
Yeah. And it would be instant, right? We wouldn't have to wait hours and hours and like, is it happening? Is it not?
Yeah,
I think that everyone, certainly several decades from now, will be voting digitally. I mean, I would assume, but I know that there are still a lot of people, especially maybe my parents' generation, they want to vote on physical paper. They want something physical that they can turn in. So do you also imagine a world where maybe the two options live side by side in some way?
for sure. Yeah, I think the first few years it will be side by side, and we'll just have to aggregate all the counts and be like,
Mhm.
okay, you can either vote analog or digital, and not both, obviously, and we'll just add up the totals. Yeah,
That's awesome. I mean, so I guess it's going to be bottom up, these smaller elections rather than top down trying to somehow convince, the people in
yeah.
power to do this for the next election. Although certainly I wish that we had guarantees that whatever happened in the next election, we could trust entirely. Well, Brett, anything else that you want to share? Anything else you're excited about, and where do you want to send people?
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about the day that, yeah, we can vote in the presidential election. So I definitely have my eye on 2028. I don't think that's inachievable 5 years from now. So,
Okay.
and in the meantime, I think we'll have some other national elections in other countries around the world before 2028. So I'm excited
Mhm.
about seeing, celebrating, True Vote being in a larger election. Personally, this is it for me. I've founded several startups. I've had a really amazing career, and this is going to be my focus for the rest of my life. So this is my last startup. I'm determined to make this work, and I'm going to devote all of my professional time to this for a long time. So you can visit TrueVote.org. Everything is linked from there. I'm pretty active on Twitter at Morrison Brett, tweeting about Bitcoin, TrueVote, and hockey and those things. And yeah, but the TrueVote.org website will be publishing more and more, and the TrueVote Twitter too, TrueVote.org. As we make progress in the product, we'll have screenshots and videos showing people how it all works, and expect that all in the next few months at a much higher cadence. So
That's
excited,
awesome.
excited to be publishing incremental progress, and that's what's great about open source. It's a product that's always going to be evolving and iterating. It's not like you wait, and then there's just one big release. It's like, oh, okay, version 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah.
They're all going to have improvements, and everyone can see it, and people can chime in. And also, I encourage, if there's any engineers watching, go to github.com/truevote, and you can look at the source code. You can create a pull request and improve the code yourself, and we'll review it and merge it.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to the updates. And you're right. You mentioned your hockey passion, and you're really skating to where the puck is going. I think that this is what we really need to focus more energy on. And like I said, from my experience as a reporter, I don't have answers, but I have a lot of questions. Certainly with some of the people that I met, and I want there to be integrity in all of our elections going forward, small or on the grandest scale. So, Brett, thanks so much for joining me.
Great. Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for checking out the video version of my show. Remember, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing constitutes as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. Please reach out if you have guest suggestions or any feedback. My email is natalie@talkingbitcoin.com, and I'll see you next time.